The cave. The cave was as old as the earth herself, formed magically way back in the mists of time when the earth was young and her energy grid was being spun and anchored. The cave was one of several major hubs linked by a vast network of power lines encircling the globe, forming the matrix which nurtures all life on Earth and is at the very heart of creation itself. The cave was located in Cavaleighton, a small, unassuming market town on the border of two counties in southern England. It was also uniquely located at the crossing point of two of Britain's most ancient tracks and three major ley lines. On a map, these lines had the appearance of being straight, but they were actually quite sinuous and ebbed and flowed, rather like a tidal river, as they snaked their way across the country, occasionally crossing each other at prominent features in the landscape, such as megalithic monuments, burial mounds, churches, and moats. The witches referred to the line with a north-south orientation as the Ermine Line due to its transformative energies. The coat of the feisty nocturnal ermine is transformed from brown to white during the winter months, and the ermine is regarded as a symbol of purity. They respectively referred to the other two lines as the Dragon Line, because of its dragon-like energies coursing through the landscape, and the Fee Line, because of its cat-like and fairy-like qualities. These ley lines, these lines of power, were part of the global grid. The lives of the witches were all inextricably linked in one way or another to the cave and this grid. The cave was a subterranean bell-shaped structure, accessed by a passage leading in from the north. Its chalk walls were covered with intricate carvings, which were mainly pagan in origin. It was almost unique in a global context, and its purpose had remained a mystery for many centuries, with theories about its use ranging from the sublime to the ridiculous. However, the witches knew that it was one of those mythical entrances to the hidden realms, located at a place where the earth currents merge to create energies that enable one to pass through the veil between the worlds and facilitate entry into the Summerlands. It was a powerful place of transformation, but the witches were the only ones who were aware of its significance. Symbolically, the cave represented the link between heaven and earth, or between the kingdoms of the living and the dead. They knew that there were parallels with the mythical ash tree of Norse mythology, Yggdrasil, which grows at the center of the cosmos and connects the 9 legendary worlds. Yggdrasil's branches extend upwards into Orsgard, the home of the gods, or heaven, or the astral plane, and its roots extend downwards into the underground, or Hel, which means hidden in Old Norse, and is also the name of the Norse goddess of the underworld. The cave was strategically positioned in a basin in the landscape, surrounded by low hills and Neolithic burial mounds. Each spring, the chalky heathland nearby was transformed into a tapestry of beautiful, delicate pasque flowers from which the homeopathic remedy pulsatilla is derived. When gazing down from vantage points on the hills above, the witches often observed concentric rings of energy shimmering in the air above the cave and the centre of Cavaleighton. It was linked along the lines of power to other subtle, ancient features in the local landscape, including a terrestrial zodiac, a large-scale map of stars formed by features in the landscape to the south, Accursus and Henge to the west, an Iron Age hill fort and some mysterious mounds to the east, and some prehistoric hill figures cut into the chalk hillside to the north. Local people often claim to see UFO activities, but the witches knew that these were simply manifestations of bleed-throughs from other dimensions. When visiting the cave, the witches often felt as though the earth and floor would give way and that they would be drawn deep down into the earth. They were aware that although the shape of the cave resembled that of an inverted womb, and that they were in effect standing on the inside of a fundus, they were actually standing at the doorway to another state of being or existence, a sort of gateway into fairy or an alternative universe, much like at Glastonbury and, to some extent, Avebury. It was a very sacred place, one of the many wombs of the earth goddess. They were also aware of the existence of other yet-to-be-discovered caves nearby. So, who were these witches, and what was their connection with the cave? The answer to this question is both exciting and beguiling. You have already met the witches in the individual portraits featured throughout the chapters of this book. The witches had all known each other before in many previous lives, but had incarnated into their current lives to work as healers and in harmony with the planet. All aspects of their individual lives had helped them to prepare for what they all intuitively knew was to be their mission in their current lives. In each case, it would be their last life on Earth. They knew that a symbiotic relationship exists between mortals and Earth energies, and they had chosen to live one last life on Earth in order to nurture this two-way exchange of divine and Earth energies by using their various esoteric skills and the knowledge they had acquired over the course of their lives. These included consciously walking the ancient pathways, visiting and dancing at ancient sites, and gathering together to perform ceremonies designed to facilitate healing, tune into the grid and the hidden realms, and engage in communion with the divine. They had always been friends throughout eternity. They were all Reiki masters. They all loved gardening, nature, and megalithic sites. They all loved walking and dancing. They all, except 4 of them, had non-pagan husbands or partners who were fascinated by and ever so slightly fearful of their abilities. They all loved solving cryptic crosswords. They all loved coffee and a good stiff drink. They had all travelled and lived all over the world and had returned to live along the ley lines feeding into the cave from the various directions. They embraced all aspects of the craft, but each of them was a specialist in one particular field. They were all vegetarians or vegans, and they all had a wicked sense of humour. After Shamana met Blaze and became a Reiki master, she had a vision while she was walking across a field near her home. Suddenly, almost as though she had been hit by a bolt of lightning, she remembered her mission in life, the task that she and her guides had jointly outlined before she was born. At that moment, she realized with absolute certainty that all the events of her life had been preparing her for the task ahead. The place and timing of her birth were no coincidence. Her extensive walking activities were no coincidence. In fact, Nothing about her life was a coincidence. She saw the energy grid, the network of energy lines running across the country and crossing at the cave. She realized that she had been born on one of those lines and that she had returned to live next to it. She knew that somehow she would be instrumental in helping to strengthen and reinforce this life-enhancing network, which serves as a sort of link between the divine energy which powers the planet and its matrix. She was aware that others had been sent to help her, but that everything would occur at its appointed time. Her mission also involved writing a book. This book, all about the events involved in the process, but at the time the full story was not revealed. She did not receive the second half of the story until several years later, when once again she had a similar vision while walking across a field. After her first vision, several years passed, during which she continued to hone her skills and walk the country's ancient paths. Blaise, who had also been granted similar insights, was her sister witch in arms, and together they celebrated the pagan festivals and gradually built up a network of like-minded souls. Their little group of 2 expanded to 3 when Vanya moved to the area, then to 4 when they met Taran at a shamanistic weekend, and yet again to 5 when Parissa arrived in the area and set up her homeopathy practice on the Dragon Line. For a while, the 5 witches continued to work in a closed group, but slowly the group started to expand as the other witches moved into the area. Foxette came first, followed by Neve and her partner Vebjörn. Sky was already in the area, but they did not become acquainted with her until she visited Neve's shop in Cavaleton to purchase materials for her ghost-busting work. The final members to join the group were Ash, Scarlet, Misty and Alice. They used to joke that their group of 13 witches was almost like a coven, but actually it was nothing like that because they were all hedge witches who mainly worked alone and only came together to work with the cave energies at certain times of the year. Like Shamana, events in the lives of the other witches had been preparing them for the mission and circumstances which had conspired to bring them together in or near Cavaleton so that they could work both individually and for the benefit of mankind and the planet as it entered a new age. They usually met at Shamana's home on the Ermin Line to work together in a circle, to tune into the network and to channel their power through the standing stone in Shamana's garden, down the Ermin Line to the cave and out into the wider grid. As already explained, this work involved a mutual exchange of energies for the benefit of both the planetary grid and the wider cosmic network, and the witches served as channels for this exchange of energy. Since they all lived on one of the lines, they sometimes also met at each other's homes to carry out their work. Sometimes at full moon, they also met in the cave itself for added impact. All over the country, this exchange of energy was taking place in various ways, either consciously, as facilitated by other like-minded groups, or unconsciously, by people walking or running the footpaths. The ethos involved was that no one is an island, that everyone and everything is connected, that everything we do, even the smallest things, affects everything else, and that we are constantly creating and evolving on all levels. As the witches continued their work, they gradually started to attract interest from other younger people with spiritual interests. The positive hub being created around the cave was an exciting place to be, and the sleepy little town started to undergo a process of regeneration as people were attracted to the area for various reasons. This was an infectious process which slowly started to spread outwards, rather like the expanding ripple effect caused by throwing a stone into water. The young witches who brought new dimensions to the group were initiated as apprentices and were trained up to carry the legacy forwards. They included Rose, a horticulturalist and water diviner, Anushka, an eco-warrior and street dancer, Amber, a crystal therapist, and Drew, a psychologist and yoga teacher. As the group continued its work, Shamana continued to chronicle the mission and prepare her book for publication. The book practically wrote itself. Shamana used to tell people that when she was writing it, it was like she had entered into an alternative state of consciousness, and that the material simply flowed through her rather than from her and out onto the page without any effort on her part. And the overriding, compelling message received by the witches as they continued to work with the cave energies was the following: "The future is bright.